Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the fourth session of Transform Smart Cities and Communities, and welcome. My name is Pierangelo Rosati. I'm Assistant Professor in Business Analytics here at DCU Business School, and I will be the MC for today's session. As some of you may know, the Transform series is a new free online seminar series that explores the growing impact of digital transformation on business and society. The event this week will specifically focus on smart cities and smart communities, and today's panel will be covering lots of different interesting topics around smart streets. I'm delighted to be joined today by Tiernan Mines, CEO and co-founder of Hello Lamppost, Niall Cunningham, CEO of Civic Group, Juan Sadaba, Assistant Professor in Architectural and Urban Design at the University of the Basque Country, and CEO and co-founder of Neray Emotional Intelligence, and Noam Berson, Brand and Agencies Partnership Manager at Pavegen. Welcome to our speakers. It's a pleasure to have you today with us. If you want to activate the camera so they can see that you are actually live there with us today, that's great. Thank you very much. For the attendees, this will be a panel discussion. So we'll kick off with some questions and try to spark some further ideas for the discussion. If you please feel free to send your questions throughout the discussion using the Q&A function that you see at the bottom of the screen. We'll try to cover as many as possible at the end of the panel discussion here. So with no further delay, I'll hand it over to our speakers to introduce their companies and their background and what brought them here today with us. They would definitely do a much better job than I would. So Tiernan, you are the first on my left corner here on the screen. So the platform decides the order in this case. Tiernan, would you like to start telling us a bit more about yourself and Hello Lamppost?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with with Hello Lamppost. So we are a public engagement platform. So we, in a nutshell, allow people in the street, like ourselves, to have text-based chat interactions with inanimate objects. So that can be anything from a bench to a bus stop to a statue, without the need for any kind of hardware or installation. Those kind of environments that we sit in can be anything from an airport to a street to a museum to a shopping mall, and we essentially add a digital interactive layer to existing physical environments. The point being is our mission, our vision is to kind of bridge the gap between local decision makers and end users, so us as visitors or as residents, bring more voices to the table and opinions to the table, and also help decision makers better understand their communities. So for a user, they might talk to a statue to hear about its history and its stories. They might talk to a bus stop to hear live bus times, and a parking meter to hear about how and why to pay for parking. Equally, they can have kind of their queries answered through hyperlocal objects, as well as it's very much a two-way chat that happens. So objects will ask people questions. So that's us as a company, and we've deployed in 25 odd different locations around the world. We just launched in Sydney, which is our first Australian deployment at the end of last year, as well as locations like San Francisco and Vancouver and Singapore and all over. For me, so as Pierangelo mentioned, I'm Tiernan. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Hello Lamppost. Bit of a meandering journey to Hello Lamppost, to be honest, but I'm not of a tech background. I'm very much of a commercial background. So started my career in a corporate, in their kind of business strategy team for the UK, and then left there to start my first venture. And then I've meandered through a couple of ventures until reaching Hello Lamppost when we incorporated and founded in 2018. So that's me and Hello Lamppost in a nutshell.
All right, thank you very much, Tiernan. Neil, you're up next on my screen. So would you like to give us an intro of yourself and Civic Group?
Yeah, I can. Will I share a few slides just to show that? Are you happy enough to show a few slides up, or?
Yeah, if you have some, that's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You should be able to share your screen there from the standard feature there at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, I think Molly needs to let me share.
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, it's enabled now.
Super. Thanks, Molly. I'll just put this up here. Okay. So I suppose Civic was incorporated in 2004, primarily as an electrical company. I'm traffic signals background, traffic signals engineer, from installation right through to programming them and setting them up on the street. So we moved kind of into the smart cities space about 3 or 4 years ago, and I suppose to sum it up, we're a hardware, software, and integration company. Whereas we would resell people's hardware, we also design and build our own, and we do software development in-house. So as you can see there, you know, standard traffic signals, we also do traffic signal systems which link the traffic signals together. And then we also do software, either bespoke or SaaS. One of our recent contracts wins was with Meath County Council, where we designed a smart asset and fault management system for them to manage all their ITS products throughout the county, which we're able to link then the, say, school warning signs with traffic signals, with zebra crossings, their camera systems, everything like that. And when you get a fault on the network, we're able to send that fault directly to the contractor who looks after that bit of equipment. One of our main features, which I'll show you today in relation to data collection, is I suppose we found very popular the last few years is we use a radar-based technology, and what we found with the councils, especially I suppose last year, in relation to COVID, is understanding the movements and the flows of people throughout the city. Using the radar, it enables us to avoid all the GDPR issues. As you can see there, the picture there is of Shannon Bridge down in Limerick. They introduced a new cycle lane across the bridge, and they wanted to understand the flow of the vehicles, the pedestrians, and the cyclists. So we stuck a radar up on the centre roundabout on a public lighting pole, put our communications equipment there. We do all the processing of the data on the edge, and then we send it to our cloud platform, which you'll see up there, which just gives the councils some idea of counts on a 15-minute basis. Other bits we would do as part of the smart city would be your smart benches, your smart bins, your smart poles. Mainly as a feature of our customers will come to us and ask us to supply this. We generally, you know, we'll only supply quality equipment and bring it to them. So that's really Civic in a nutshell. That's what we do, and I'm CEO. I've been at the helm for the last 10, 12 years, and we're growing with about 30 guys on the road, engineers out on vans, literally installing and maintaining equipment.
All right. Thank you very much. Juan, you're next. So you are assistant professor, so you are a bit of an academic and a bit of an industry person. So it would be interesting to see what you do on your research front and on your business front.
Yes. Well, I will start maybe that way. So I explain a little bit how our company was born. I'm an architect, and some years ago, I came up with kind of a design solution that was kind of a interactive modular lamppost, or it was not a lamppost, but something like a post in which you could take modules and make them assemble in different ways, and also made them interactive with the through the use of technologies. Then this cooperativist group in the Basque Country came over and proposed me to once I have the patent, to develop this and move forward with them. And this is how the company, the Nereid Emotional Intelligence, that's why the name, started growing, or developing this, everything based on this patent. However, the company is based, I like to say, because I come from architecture and urban planning, I like to say urban design more. I like to say that we will work on the urban space, and we try to find solutions for the urban space of the city, and then technology is a tool, because sometimes it happens with smart cities that in a way technology comes first, and it looks that something is smart because it has technology. And we have the city, we have to solve the city in this case, because we are talking cities, and then we use technology as a means to work on it. So our company wants to find solutions for the city. If it's smart, better, but working on using technologies, we try to find solutions for the city. It's an implementation in Spain, in the past country mainly. We've been in Singapore like Tiernan. Out of this, I ended up being in Singapore for 3 years, teaching there and making our project evolve. And now I'm back in Bilbao, in the north Spain, Basque Country, and we are going on and teaching at the university, and at the same time we are moving on with this company.
All right, thank you very much. And last but not least, Noam, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Juan. Yeah, so as you guys may have not heard of Pavegen, we're a London-based patented technology company, and what we have is a flooring system that allows you to generate renewable energy, insights, and rewards. And it's as simple as that your footsteps generate power. You walk and you generate this energy. To date, similar to Tiernan, we've done a lot of international projects in 36 countries with some of the largest and most influential brands and organizations like Google, the Olympics, and Adidas. And as of next week, we'll be launching in the 37th country in Oman in the Middle East. It's a very simple system. Your footstep and the pressure from it generates energy on the generators that sit below the tiles. And this energy can either be used instantaneously or stored in a battery. I know today's context is around smart cities. And for us, what's important in these cities isn't just the energy and the output, but actually the input of that energy, which is the human. And Pavegen allows communities to participate and unlocks excitement for the sustainability journey. We are the ones that are making energy fun. We're allowing people to be connected to energy and also using that energy to connect them to the built environment. On the data side, we're also linked through the cloud technology. And what we do there is essentially get real-time footfall data and start to use it for analyzing traffic and things like that. And more importantly, I think, is now that we have Bluetooth beacons that will be sitting on the generators. And why that's important is it means that we can start to reward an individual for sharing their footstep and having essentially a footstep counter sit behind existing apps. So yeah, really excited to be here today. Thanks for including us and looking forward to the discussion. I will say that we don't have any installations in Dublin to date. So if you guys tweet at us at Pavegen and use that hashtag Transport Smart Cities, let us know where you'd like to see it. And all of us here at the DCU and at Pavegen will work hard for it.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll kick off with the first question. And given that these days you can't have a panel discussion without a question on COVID-19, let's just get it out of the way immediately. So as we know, COVID-19 essentially is impacting how people use the street, and it's definitely impacting the social and commercial functions of streets. So when looking ahead, when some of the restrictions will start easing a bit, okay, so we can go out again and try to have a bit more social life and so on. Do you think your technologies can play a role into bringing people back to high street and shopping streets, or to the streets of city centers in general? So Neil, do you want to go first this time? You're muted.
I suppose for us, it's on the ITS, the traffic side. There's the technology from a retail point of view, from a high street, may or may not fit depending on what way you look at it. But I definitely believe that technology will play a big role in it. Like, you look at cafes now, cafes and restaurants. A year ago, you'd always get a menu. Now you get an app, you get a QR code, you scan, and you order from that. you know, your link with the waiter nowadays is nearly gone. And I think that's the model going forward. I think it's going to be a blended model on the high street using technology. We'll still go out, but there will be definitely more of a click and collect feel to that. I think that's the way it's going to go. I think from a retail point of view, I think it'll need a big influence from government level in relation to the rental incomes for the stores and the landlords, because, you know, to compete with the big ones like Amazon, who don't have the rent pressures of big cities, you know, there'll definitely have to be something brought in there. So I think technology will play a role, but I definitely believe there's other influences in getting the high street back and people out there.
All right, thank you very much. Juan, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think I will try to connect this technology in general, our technology, with what Neil talked about, traffic in this case, because I think that the future of streets is about connectivity in every sense. I mean, every sense I mean is digital and physical. I mean, digital connectivity will change mobility, and in the cities, let's take a street. In the streets, we have now a lane for the cars, and we have the sidewalks. But it will change. This is changing because of the autonomous car, the personal mobility vehicles, and our technologies that we're putting on the streets. So I think the future of streets will change completely. The cross section of the street will be composed by different lanes. You know that something now is called, and is getting more and more a hype and trendy, but it's true, the curb management, because you will have close to the curb, you will have all there will be new lanes, there will be autonomous vehicles of every size, maybe in the future, in the very close future, I will have an app, and I will call a car for, I don't know, I have maybe a trip, 50 kilometers trip. So, and we are two. So I will order online a two-seater, or I don't know how we will see it, in line or at beside or whatever. But I will order one of the two seats, and then I will take it and I will leave it somewhere else. This will change the face of the street completely. So our technologies, I think, they will help all these things happen, because we are making things interactive. But the digital connections will change the face of the city by mobility, because mobility really will change the physical arrangement of the streets more. Even that the digital will be the means, the tools to make this happen. This is my point on this.
All right, thank you very much. Noam, what's your view on how Pavegen can actually change maybe how we interact with streets post COVID-19?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure the panelists and speakers, you know, can empathize with this, is that we're missing that human interaction at the moment a lot. And there's no doubt in my mind, and you mentioned Amazon, Neil, that all these digital and omni-channel, you know, experiences online are missing that human interaction. So as soon as it's safe to open and to actually go out to the high street, there's going to be a massive resurgence. And the way I see Pavegen working, you know, and complementing that, is that we are a very physical technology. We allow you to interact with the built environment. We allow you to share your footstep, you know, for the betterment of your society, and you're leaving your footstep behind for communities. So I think that the high street should never lose sight of what makes it unique, you know, that very physical human element. And as soon as it's safe, that, you know, there's going to see an embracing of this. And, you know, if I look into the future, I hope that our high streets are, you know, a bit more like a theme park, a bit more things to experiment with and have fun with and interact. And I'm sure that really, you know, ties into a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing at Hello Lamppost, Tiernan.
Yeah, I guess just building on that point, but also a couple of points that Neil and Juan made, is taking a little step back. I think historically our high streets, our town centres have been really focused on the physical, and in recent history, the network. And what we're seeing now is a big shift in focus, which hasn't happened in history, which is a focus on us as people, the users of our high streets and town centres. So finally, kind of those three things are now being interconnected. So the network, the physical, and us as users. And to build on Neil's point, I think what COVID's done is accelerate. I think the shift was already happening, but accelerate the shift towards high streets and town centers being destinations. So not just about retail, but being multi-use and multi-purpose. And to Noam's point is, yeah, we're one of those things that I think are contributing to that, is making the heart of our communities and the heart of our towns more destinations, so more interactive, more playful, more multi-purpose. And there's, you know, some fantastic kind of examples around the world outside of Hello Lamppost that are doing similar things. But yeah, for us specifically, it's about making our town centres, our high streets, more interactive, more useful, more playful, so that you're not just, you know, going in there on a transactional basis. You're there to live, work, or play in each community. So that's kind of how we see what's happened in the shift, and we're hopefully just one company, one product, one platform that are contributing to that.
Right, and so far we kind of touched upon, say, some of the social benefits, but part of the society are also the businesses that have been very affected by the lockdowns and the fact that they cannot stay open for a very long time. So I was wondering, is there any opportunity for businesses to use your technologies to extend their commercial activities or to capture further commercial opportunities? I think that's probably more, I don't know, maybe for Tiernan and Noam, I would say they're definitely probably one as well. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, happy to touch on that. We're already seeing kind of that question come to us from councils kind of across the world. Obviously, we can integrate things like trails, heritage trails, for example, when people are interacting with objects. But as a consequence, what our platform can do is inadvertently drive some footfalls through different areas of towns and cities. And consequently, we're actually working with a number of councils and business improvements districts to encourage the increase in dwell time, the increase in footfall, and consequently make people aware of the local spend, the local shops that exist, the local retail that exists. And there's various different mechanisms, about offers and freebies being made available, but where relevant for the user. And we've launched a document which is all about helping to reopen the high street, which, the heavy focus is around helping those local businesses that have suffered for a year or so and that were already suffering before. So yeah, we're doing our part, I think, to try and at least make users aware when they're in town interacting with objects that those businesses are open, available, and still available to serve customers that are there.
All right. And Noam, you mentioned the part of the Pavegen solution are rewards for energy generated and so on. Are any of these rewards could be tailored for example, for local businesses to let them get some more opportunities, or how do they work?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. If you take our project in Romford Mall, which is in London, as you walk over the Pavegen, you earn rewards on your mobile app. And the way that Romford Mall has looked to monetize this, and some of the benefits are they've seen increased app downloads, and they've seen a real high redemption rate of those rewards being actually used in stores and in those retailers. And why this is, I guess, is so important is that retailers will pay or can pay in the mall example to be featured on the app and have those stores involved. Now, if you look at it in a city context, it could be a council that funds the project and has, this rewards element, and then does not charge the retailers, but still drives footfall to them and continues that conversation. So I think it's also interesting outside of the rewards bit that it's an equal exchange, between the retailer, between the city that's saying, share your footstep with us. with the community, and in return will reward you. So it's a very altruistic relationship. And I think that brands, cities, and so forth need to see how they can create those relationships that aren't just commercially overt, but are also rooted in some interaction.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question on that? Is working on that, Noam, how have you found the balance in terms of making sure that the user benefits stay at the heart, and that it's not just a tokenistic reward in return for brand ad revenue, basically?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I'll tap into it. We've done it on a few different campaigns, but really what we think is that there's also that reward element that is not commercially overt, but value-based. So that as you walk over a Pavegen, you're earning, a social currency. Let's call it a DCU dollar for the example, as we're in Dublin, and that you would use that DCU dollar towards either local charities, national efforts, and programs that the client, the city, the retailer, whoever it is, wants to demonstrate. And, that's a way, I think, for us to call out brands and consumers to call out brands and say, you want to, show that you care about the planet, about the environment, the community. Well, here's a chance to reward and use that money, not just for the next pair of sneakers at Adidas, but, to help the football clubs in Dublin or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think, Tiernan, that's exactly it. You have to be extremely careful in that, because today people sniff out, don't they, anything that's, overtly commercial.
Yeah, I mean, we get asked all the time, like, are you just an ads platform via lampposts? And absolutely not. We're the complete opposite. We will only accept rewards mechanisms for users when it's actually beneficial for them and actually local.
Yeah, I suppose what we've seen in Dublin with the deployment of smart benches, people are really paranoid about, if there's a little camera in them, because, they're wondering what data are they picking up. Like, you take a jogger in the park, runs by a smart bench, and within seconds, a targeted ad comes on their phone for Nike runners. It's a fine line, I suppose, between socially beneficial and commercially aggressive. And for us to get the commercial guys to fund some of this, there is always going to be the want for them to get some reward back. And it's just trying to get the balance between doing right, as opposed to, as you guys said, people are always looking at the negative of this technology. We need to, encourage them that there's positives. Okay, you might get that targeted ad, but look what else is, they're bringing to it. So yeah, it's a challenge.
And Juan, I looked at the video on your website there, and I think one of the functionalities might be essentially when you walk by a store with your app, essentially, and you work within different posts, and you walk by a store with promotions, this kind of activities, might get a notification or something like that. Is that did I look that correctly? And is there something that businesses are taking on, or do you think that there would be a common feature of your solution in the future?
Yes, well, similarly to my mate here, we didn't do a deployment as big enough to have really real data of a big space. But yes, this is the big challenge and big danger that we all have, because I think we are here now. We are thinking of we are always captive and a little bit dependent of big companies, because they are the ones who are giving you the connectivity. So it's very difficult to create what I think we will want, which is creating bottom-up technologies that really help people have of course, make profit, create revenue, but at the same time make people's life better. So it's very difficult this is of course a big challenge, and as I said, a danger, as an opportunity too. But the point is to try to make things bottom up, even though your boss in a world, you will be dependent on captive of big company, big IT company, because they are the ones giving it to you. So maybe in the future this will get more segregated, or maybe providers will more segregated. I don't know, because now everything is dependent on them. Even when we want to work on the streets, and if we want to get some data of how people are moving, we have to ask the providers to give us the data that they collect and they give back to us. It will not be us. We can get some of the data, but in general, if they have to triangulate to locate people, is them doing that, even though they could be through our routers, but it's them doing that. So we are always dependent on them. So it's not easy to find the balance in our company, because our company is part of a big group of companies in the Basque Country. We have a very strong tradition on cooperativism. We have always self-managed groups, and we are very, very socially concerned, for real. So we signed an agreement among us that none of us will use data in a bad way. Try to define that, but anyway, at least we are always very, 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 very socially concerned, and we try to go that way always. Even we have very, very strong rule for ourselves. I mean, for the gap between salaries, for the quantity of time and money that we dedicate to social causes. For that, we are very, very, very responsible. And I think it's not easy, because we'll have always the big guys on top of us, but we have to try to make it in a good way, to do it in a good way. This is it.
All right, thanks. And you all kind of touched upon the use of data and say that in a good way, or in the best way possible. So of course, privacy is always a concern, as Niall pointed out there, even particularly with cameras, but also with interaction with phones and so on. So what measures do you have in place to make sure that this privacy is not breached with your solutions? I'll leave this, accepting volunteers for this, because that's always a tricky question, might be. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I can speak from our perspective. I think it sort of relates to something that Juan said, which I think what we're going to see going forward is many, many more companies that kind of align purpose and profit. What we've seen in recent history, not naming any large corporate names, but is, commercializing people's data behind a gray cloud, the black box. Whereas I think regulations and consumer behaviors are going to shift towards a necessary openness from companies on, if they are using data, how and what value is it bringing to us as consumers, as end users. There's going to be a huge shift towards that. And for us, that fits in with us, right? We're not a data scraping company and selling that data on. Actually, we're a tool. We sell a software tool. And we're very clear about the data we do collect is anonymous, so we're not collecting any personal information. All we're interested in is people's genuine opinions, sentiment, and feedback, so that we can provide that to local decision makers, so that they can make our towns and cities better for where we live, work, and play. So it's kind of, we're trying to close that gap and create that loop. And we've been very clear from the start that, it's important that interactions as standard are anonymous for us, because that builds trust with the user. And also it removes our motivation from being a data selling company. And for us, like the way we see it is, it's all about business models. If you can find a business model that brings value to the customer, brings value to the user, and they might be the same thing, and there's a business model that fits that doesn't infringe on people's privacy from a moral perspective, then that's where we're going to see more companies. And I guess we're just lucky that we found a model where, councils and other organizations will pay for our platform, will pay for our software, and we're still providing value for the user and the customer, and we're just sitting in the middle. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope that helps.
Right. And Neil, what you mentioned earlier the use of radars and to avoid GDPR complaints. So what happens when I drive on that bridge?
When a which? Sorry.
What happens when I drive on that bridge that you show there on the picture? What happens in the background? So what kind of information you capture and how you preserve the privacy?
Well, the radar doesn't actually capture any picture. What we use, it literally just captures the mass of the object, and then the algorithms do the work for us, and they'll tell us then whether it's a bike, a person, or a car, or a bus. So it's a really clean way of getting data from the towns and the cities, from the streets, without all the rigmarole of GDPR. And I suppose with COVID, it's a quick way for the likes of DCC, Dublin City Council, who we started selling the radars to about 3 years ago, to getting information quickly in without having to go and do a big DPIA assessment and the GDPR assessment, because as we know, the lawyers love to dwell over them, and the costs just seem to spiral, which means the project never gets legs. So from us, we kind of steer away from cameras. Not to say that cameras don't have a place, because they do, especially when it comes to enforcement, and you do need to maybe capture a registration. But I think if you do all that processing on the edge, and therefore, you know, the data that's going is encrypted, I think you're safer. But I think people are probably afraid of what's happening with their data. I think we need to educate them better to say that, you know, this, data is good if it's used with the right people, you know, for the right purposes. But I think just people, since the GDPR came out, you know, everybody, like, if you have a camera on your house and someone walks by your front door, legally they have a right to ask for that data, you know, and that's crazy. Like, I mean, you know, we need to have a balance. As Tiernan said, it's about, you know, using the data correctly, and then people will get faith and get trust in that, and they'll buy into it.
I think that's a really good point about trust. I think we've accelerated so quickly with technology and smart cities, especially, that you know, there's been a lot of negativity around data privacy in a good way, because it creates a positive shift. But it's almost, you know, for future innovators, it almost puts you a couple of steps back, because the immediate reaction is negativity, because there's that apprehension that's been created.
Well, I would say that's well known that bad news travels faster than good news. So that's always the case, particularly in this context where privacy or data breaches or corporations that have been misusing the data. So I think that definitely contributes toward that sense of distrust or lack of trust, maybe for some applications. But yeah, there's definitely an education piece there that needs to be done, and to make people aware that not all companies are there just to steal information and make the most out of them just for selfish purposes. So Juan and Noam, you, if I'm correct, both your technologies involve the use of apps. So how do you balance out how do you protect personal information when using the app? And you also have a location as well. So how does it work on your side? Who wants to start?
I'm happy to jump in and say that, similar to Tiernan and Neil, everything's completely anonymous, and it's about, you know, on the app side, understanding communities and not individuals. And actually, from a city or brand or retailer's point of view, that's giving you insights that are whole and not at an individual level, and insights that are actually not being looked at enough. And I think, you know, like both of you guys said before me, is that there is this erosion of trust. And an example that comes to it, I think, is in the smart cities context, was the pushback that Google's Sidewalk Labs was having in Toronto. People were worried that, you know, if I'm sitting on this bench, I can't just use this bench to enjoy a cup of tea and, you know, have a chat with Neil, because, you know, well, we don't trust Google potentially, or, you know, we don't trust, you know, what they're going to do with that biocentric data and how that operates with other data sources. So yeah, for us, it's always about community insights as a whole. it's anonymous, and you know it's GDPR compliant for all those reasons.
Well, I'm not an IT guy myself, but I'd say that technically you don't have many options. To protect the data that you take, that you collect, that you gather, yes, you do. But when it comes to the big companies, you cannot grant it. So we try to create trust, as you mentioned, all of you. But out of that, you cannot do much. You need the human side to get involved there to protect the data, because even when we with cities, I know that in Bilbao, for instance, all the routers in the city that are put by the municipality itself, they are tracking people. I mean, they're tracking, of course, they're tracking mobiles, they're tracking devices, and they have all that data. It's anonymous data, but if there is a killing in the city and they need to track it down, they will find it, because it's the number of your phone, is what is the whatever. But anyway, they have a tracking number, so they will find your mobile, and therefore you will find you. So if they want, they can track it down. So technically, it's not easy. We need to commitment, and more laws will evolve, and we'll try to from our little perspective, little positions, where we can do the best we can do. But then we need the administration to really, as it is happening now with Europe, China, the States, to get more involved and develop laws that get us protected. There is no other way. In the little range and the short range, we have to be more ethical. In the big one, we need laws.
Right. And now moving on to a slightly different aspect of these smart streets and these smart devices that we have around our cities. Neil, if I'm correct, you are involved into procuring essentially different kind of devices that cities then say local governments or councils will actually install. So they are the ultimate decision makers, and that's typically how this kind of projects are actually funded. So what are the challenges that they are facing in terms of procurement, and then, or maybe what are the challenges that you see when dealing with the local governments, local councils, in terms of convincing them to implement this kind of solutions in the local communities?
Well, a lot of challenges we've seen is budget. You know, like I suppose if you take a smart one of our smart areas in Dublin, you know, they were looking to put in smart benches and, you know, bring some tech into the area, but they were pushed then to put in planters, which are just big wooden box with, you know, flowers in them, which is great. But I think that this is where there's a generational shift. There's still a thing out there where, you know, oh, what do you need a smart bench for? You know, you don't need that. It just doesn't do it. You know, let's get a box, let's put some flowers in it. I think both of them have a place in it. So again, it's about engaging with the community and seeing what they want and the trust. Because as Noam says, it's if someone sits down on a bench or someone walks by a smart bin, they want to know that is it taking any of my data or is it not, or what is it doing? Because until that trust comes in, the feedback to the local councillors is going to be, I'll just put a box with some plants in it, because we know we're safe with that, you know, and that's where we feel that's where the pushback is coming from smart city equipment. All
right. And Tiernan, so what's been your experience so far? I mean, why local governments should let lampposts or parking meters talk?
It's a really good question. No, I guess just off of Neil's point, I think any barriers, I think that certainly that we see, and I should say everyone that we've worked with so far has been incredibly forward thinking. And I think going back to COVID, I think there's been you know, an accelerated shift again in behavior change within public sector in general. in terms of embracing more technology and mass education around different technology and digital platforms. So, I mean, that's really helped us. You know, it's hard enough to explain how you might talk to a lamppost, let alone why. So that's really helped us. But I think from a barriers perspective, you know, at the end of the day, like, everyone has to appreciate that organizations like councils are public servants. They're spending public money, so it's only right that they should be cautious and that they should, you know, do their due diligence and they should go through that process. That's right. I think at the end of the day, how they should be looking at those things is, if it brings real value to the community, then, you know, why shouldn't they be doing it? If there's no obvious value to the community, then yes, question it, or to the citizen, then question it. I think it's just like Neil said, there's a gap which hopefully we're helping with a little bit, in terms of being able to understand mass opinion and mass community feelings. Like, do they want a planter or a bench? Which is where maybe there is a gap. So they just go with the status quo, what they know and what's comfortable, which is a you know, a normal human reaction. But yeah, the definite barriers which I think COVID has helped with has been status quo and breaking that status quo, what they're used to doing, etc. But also knowing that there's true value to the citizen, because at the end of the day, that's who they're serving.
Right. And so Juan, what's your view? I mean, how do you think we can counterbalance some of the short sight typical of politics at times, or some of the pushback on these technologies?
Yes, I will come down to a very practical, down-to-earth problem that you find when you talk to municipal corporations, because that they are not really prepared for the shift that we are having with technology. So when you talk to the IT guys, you talk IT. When you talk to the urban policy, urban design guys, you talk urban design. And it's very difficult to sit them together and to find someone to decide that this is good for us, because IT guys in general, they will not want more problems. They don't want another thing that can fail. So it's not easy to have all of them together and decide that, yes, this smart bench will be good for us. It has to be the politician or someone above them that really takes the decision, listening to what all of them have to do. So it's a very down-to-earth problem, but it happens that you don't have a real interlocutor. They are all taking their part, but still, technology is still not transversal. I mean, it's not. It will, but still today, you come with someone that of which everybody understands a little part, and it's not easy to make it to have the role, the ball rolling.
Right. And Noam, anything you would like to add?
I'd just say that I think we've also seen those siloed teams, like Juan has mentioned, and that as things progress, it'll be really interesting to see at the pilot phase how well these authorities ask questions, you know, and agree on what the questions and metrics of success are, so that when that pilot phase is closed, you know, they can scale technologies like Pavegens or Civics, you know, or Hello Lamppost and so forth, rather than, you know, doing one project and then sort of not being sure what's conclusive there. And I think you're going to see more and more clarity on that, because municipalities are creating new teams and have seen the need to create that. But really will be interesting to sort of see how that moves forward.
Yeah, if I can just add a quick point on that. I think you know, I don't think at the same time as we see many siloed teams within local authorities, I don't think we're at day dot either. You know, there's the movement of the herd has started, I think. You know, there are a lot of forward-thinking municipalities around the world at the moment, and it's being driven top down, right? And you see it, like Noam said, where teams are being created to lead on those things. So, you know, London appointed Theo Blackwell, the first chief digital officer for the city, you know, and he said openly, as a municipality, as an authority, we should be thinking more like a startup. We should be willing to trial things, you know, and for a public organization to be saying that, that's a big step change, I think, in embracing new technology and innovation.
Yeah, definitely. So I will only have one last question before we look at the question coming from the audience. So I might ask this to you, Juan, first. So looking forward, say looking ahead, what are the big trends and technologies that you think will impact your business and your solution?
Well, I will go back to what I said in the beginning to answer this, which is, I think that technology is a tool. It's a means to do something better for society. So, and I like to put this because with the clear dominance of IT now, it looks that the technology, people that come from technology have more to say than others that don't come from technology. So I think we need a rebalance for that. Actually, the example I like to put is the Apple AirPods that everybody criticizes. It's not about technology because Bluetooth earpads or whatever it exists in I don't know how many years, but maybe 10. But nobody put them separated and did something cool that in the beginning everybody said it's not going to work. So it's not technology. It's some clever mind doing something different. So technology is there, of course, but it existed before. So I think that we have to rebalance this superpower of technology to get it into the things that we have to solve and make technology transversal as something that is everywhere, that we all get familiar to and use it to solve technology, to solve problems, and not go with technology that we have data, we have technology, so we can solve this problem. No, you can solve the problem because you have this technology, but you need a good approach done for now by humans.
Okay.
So this is my point.
That's great. Noam, what do you think?
Very quickly, I think the trend that's going to be exciting for Pavegen is to see how brands, municipalities, and authorities evolve their promise to do good and put the community first. After a year that's been difficult and continues to be difficult, and where we're missing human interaction, this is the thing that I'll be tracking first and foremost, and want to see whether it's next summer, this spring when we're out, or next year, whenever that might be, what that looks like.
Super. Tiernan?
For us, I think we have noticed an accelerated shift in generational prioritization around democracy, and that's one thing that we're built upon, is trying to better hyperlocal democracy. So that's one trend. I think we're going to see a shift, like Noam said, it is communities and citizens at the center of decisions that are being made. And then the other thing, it's a bit futuristic, but I have a strong belief that our streets and our infrastructure will become increasingly more interactive, and Hello Lamppost being a splice of that.
Great. And Niall?
I suppose for us it'd be multimodal, 5G, and the CITS, because we definitely see them three having a big impact on our business in relation to our traffic signals and our traffic management systems. When we have the vehicles speaking to the traffic controllers, protecting our vulnerable road users, which we're working on at the minute with one of our partners. So that's where we see the big shift in technology, and that's where we're all excited about.
All right, that's great. Lots of interesting points we've covered so far. So I'll kick off with some questions from our attendees. So there is a question there for Tiernan. Would you consider voice interaction as instead of text interaction in the future?
Yeah, it's something we're building out at the moment. So it's still using people's mobile devices, particularly for visually impaired. So we want to release that so that our platform is still accessible for the visually impaired.
Does that create any particular challenge from a privacy perspective, given that someone might be recognized based on their voice or something? So
the user's still anonymized. So even if they're interacting by voice or by text, we still can't identify them as an individual. we have no way of matching up that voice to something else.
Then there is a more general question which I think might apply to all of you. So feel free to start answering the question, whoever wants to go first. Is there often any objections from town councils or residents about implementing smart technology in their region? Have you experienced any of these rejection from a community perspective?
I'll jump in there. The only challenges I think we have is when companies come in and they want to run a pilot, and I suppose we're getting better at it now, but at the beginning they would go and install their equipment on street lights and poles, and have no real regard for the city and public realm. And then the guys that maintain the streetlights then would have to look after them, and they wouldn't know what the technology is that's hanging off the side of the pole. It could be dangerous, it could be whatever. So I think that is what we seen at the beginning. It's got better in the last couple of years, whereas there's more integration between, you know, using local partners to install pilot equipment who understand the city's assets and know who to speak to, and don't just bolt it onto a pole, walk away and leave it there. Because what ends up happening is in 5 years' time, when all these pilots are finished, you'll have these boxes all over the city doing absolutely nothing. Lads have come along, they've drilled holes in public lighting poles, which end up rusting, can become dangerous. So that's the kickback we've seen. You know, if it's done right, it's welcomed. If you go in there like a bull in a china shop, you'll be ran out the door.
Would anyone wants to add anything to that?
Just a quick one. I think just a general observation. I mean, we don't have the experience of the kind of hardware IoT side of smart cities, but just generally, we've seen a bit of a shift from 5+ years ago, where smart cities theme was kind of evolving, and you know, it was very much kind of a sexy term. We've seen a shift from that to, right, okay, we understand a bit more about IoT now, and you know, what problem is that piece of kit solving, as opposed to let's strap it onto the lamppost because it's sexy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, yeah.
And then another question there with regard to disabilities. So in what ways would smart benches and other smart technologies be accessible for users that are physically impaired, essentially?
I'm happy to answer that from Pavegen's perspective, and that pushchairs, bicycles, wheelchairs can all go over and contribute as well. So we're quite lucky in that sense, and that's just because, you know, it's important that everyone is part of that community regardless of who they are.
Okay. Then there is a question here more specific on smart benches. So maybe Niall, if you want to take this. What happens if the bench records people talking about illegal activities, for example, planning a terrorist attack?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's the balance between right and wrong, and I think the society we live in nowadays, you're never going to win that argument either way, because there will be people that will say, although the result of what was going on was wrong, the action you took, you know, it's like I'm listening to this podcast at the minute called The Grey Zone, and it's very much a grey zone. Like it's everything that goes on in that area which nobody really understands and no one wants to make a decision on. And I'm glad I don't have to take that call because it is a big one. But everyone will have an opinion on this, so it's difficult.
In fairness, it wasn't an easy question to answer. And then a last question here, just because we're running out of time. So I guess here they mentioned lampposts, but I think this might also apply to one solution. So why should people text or interact with the lamppost rather than just using Google to find out the information?
Well, this is the question that they always they always make you, why this if I have the phone? This is true, you have the phone, but people need objects, and people are in the streets, and my grandma probably will not look at their phone. And me, actually, this in presbyopia glasses. I mean, people need objects, and they will we need things to interact with other than the phone. So of course you can do everything with your phone, but it's not also only about the physics, it's about making things simple and human if they come from machines, so that you can maybe really have an interaction and something physical related to the digital or mechanical. Because yes, that's it more or less. This is the answer at the beginning. When they tell you, say yes, it's true. I can do it with the mobile. I can do almost everything with my mobile. Now I don't need a watch. I need nothing. I need nothing because everything is on my mobile. But life is not about looking at your mobile and skipping the rest of the world. And we are getting more and more aware of this. So we need to interact with other things. Now we just can text them and do some, but more and more there will be more. The flow will be more human, probably more human-like. So this process is unstoppable, and it's moving forward.
And Tiernan?
Yeah, just building on that, actually, it's funny Juan mentioned like more human. So our vision is to humanize cities, is to bring our streets, our objects to life. And I guess for the answer to the question, it's building on Juan's point again. It's making our built environments more user friendly. You know, you can Google almost anything. And I use one example. Planning permissions in the UK. Everyone knows that a yellow notice on a lamppost represents some sort of change happening in the area. But I'll ask you, have you ever, Googled that planning permission, gone onto the website, filled out the form, and given your feedback? It's elements like that in our built environment that we're trying to make a bit easier, a bit more user friendly, a bit more human.
Okay, that's great. So before wrapping up, I would just like to thank Tiernan, Neil, Juan, and Noam for their interesting insights and for this wonderful conversation today. It's been very insightful, and I think that our attendees and myself as well will take away lots of interesting points. And for those of you who are interested, the final session of Transform Smart Cities and Communities will take place tomorrow and starting at 1 p.m. We will have Robin Sanders talking about social inclusion in the context of smart cities, and James Noakes from City Innovation Broker at Belfast City Council. So we'll recover some of the smart cities initiatives in the north. And then the next Transform event instead will be at the beginning of March, so the week starting on the 1st, and we'll look at circular economy. So I hope to see many of you tomorrow, and even more at our next Transform event. So thank you again to our speakers, and see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you,
Yeah. Bye-bye.